Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the UK Sim Racing Community's Formula 4 League Season 1, as brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform, available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today marks round number 4 of the Arrive and Drive Championship, which indeed has proven to be a very challenging championship despite its casual nature over the opening 3 rounds. Last time out, of course, we were up in Scotland at the Knockhill circuit in Fife, but today we are at the Snetterton circuit in Norfolk of England, and it is the case we're at the 300 layout, the layout that is much loved by whether it's open wheel races, alternative touring car races, you name it. It is the case that most classes of car have raced here in British Series at some point, and I'm very pleased to say that we're here tonight for 3 races of all full-on action and close and intense racing over the course of proceedings, and indeed what a circuit to be at. And the added thing to this is the fact that this broadcast is the first broadcast of the series that is live. Of course, the last 3 rounds we'll be bringing you as post-round broadcast for your viewing pleasure. Due to scheduling conflicts, we haven't quite been able to bring you that live broadcast, but it is the case tonight. We're bringing you all the 8 racing action live as it happens, which means we're not limited by technical limitations on replay files of iRacing. We'll be able to take a look back at when the drama happens if we happen to miss it, and it is the case we're able to give you even further analysis beyond what we've been able to do previously. In the commentary box tonight, you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And here's the case, this broadcast is being brought to you live on the UK Sim Racing Twitch channel. That is twitch.tv/UK Sim Racing, and we will be going racing soon. In about 9 minutes time or so, we'll be making our way into the qualifying session. But it is the case that whilst we are in the build-up to tonight, let's take a look at the season so far and what continues to lie ahead. Well, as we look to the calendar here, it is the case, of course, much like we said previously, 2 weeks ago, it was on the case of the 13th of July, we went racing in the Scottish circuit of Knockhill, in a race that whilst we didn't have too many drivers take to the circuit, there was plenty of racing action across our 3 classes, whether platinum, gold or silver, and it is the case that whilst we're expecting limited numbers tonight, you can be sure that the quality will surpass the quantity out of the circuit. Before that, of course, we're an absolutely ram-packed Alton Park for round number 2 back on the 29th of June, and we kicked everything off, of course, with Donington Park, particularly the shorter Donington Park National Circuit back on the 15th of June, but today it is the Snetterton 300 circuit, for it is the 27th of July, and we're at the midpoint of the championship. It is the case we've got 3 more rounds after this to wrap up proceedings. We'll, of course, be heading to Silverstone in 2 weeks' time on the 10th of August, the much-loved circuit there at Silverstone, before then making our way all the way back down to Kent in England, the county of Kent, for Brands Hatch, a circuit very close to heart for myself, and it is the case we'll be going racing out on the 24th of August, before for the season finale making our way across the pond, across the Atlantic Sea, over to Lime Rock on the 7th of September to bring the curtain down on the Arrive and Drive Championship. And it is the case that for those final 3 rounds as well, all proceedings will be brought to you live, but with that in mind, let's take a look at the track. And the track, of course, is the Snetterton Circuit 300 variant in particular, and it is the case this circuit, located in Norfolk in England of the United Kingdom, is a circuit that's made up of 13 corners, as may be seen from the image provided by simracingwiki.com. Thank you to them. This circuit is one which is full of a mixture of corners and aspects. You have the long start-finish straight, then from Murray's Bend at turn 13 all the way across the start-finish line into the sweeping right-hander of Rich's Corner, a double right apex effectively, where the idea is you want to stay a little bit wider than the initial apex, but then get a nice tight exit apex, the second one, and make your way in the run down towards Montreal Hairpin. Previously known as Montreal Hairpin, turn number 2, now known more formally as the Wilson Hairpin, in memory of Justin Wilson, who of course passed away a few years ago now, but it is the case of a very infamous driver in British motorsport, and we do remember him on through the Wilson Hairpin at turn number 2, and as our drivers make their way out of arguably perhaps the slowest corner on the circuit, the Wilson Hairpin or Montreal, depends on your nomenclature, we then head our way to Palmer at turn number 3, making our way into the infield section effectively, and it is the case then we run up towards Agostini, another nasty hairpin at turn number 4, before our drivers roll their way through Hamilton Curve at turn number 5, and then have to balance it and battle it on the brakes into Oggie's Corner of turn 6 and 7, exiting out through the kink of 7 and in towards Williams Bend, the right-hander effectively that curves its way onto the Bentley straight. The back straight, not as long as our start-finish straight, but quite close to the length of the start-finish straight, which we should point out is known as the centre straight, but as our drivers make their way way down the Bentley Straight. They'll be just in for position and particularly looking to get themselves set up for the very tricky Brundle-Nelson complex of turns 9 and 10, whereby they'll make their way under the board, under the bridge, which sees spectators be able to get into the circuit, and our drivers will be looking to battle on the brakes, trail braking through Brundle into Nelson for the right angle turn number 10 before making their way into Bomb Hole Corner. Now you're probably wondering at this point, bombs, that sounds as though it's a bit of the military. Well, it is the case. Bomb Hole Corner is known as Bomb Hole Corner because it is a massive crater essentially resulting from a bomb exploding, and it is the case that Bomb Hole is a corner where our drivers will drop down into the apex and then surge up the other side. And do keep in mind that this circuit, of course, being built on an old Royal Air Force airfield. It is the case that the layout has changed over the years, but this circuit is a venue which is very flat, and that will be felt all the way through the final two corners of Coram of turn number 12, the never-ending right-hander, and then Murray's Bend of turn number 13, the left-hander, which will see our drivers have to be sharp on the brakes after coming out of the flying Coram corner to complete the lap as they run their way back onto the centre straight and to the timing line. But indeed, this track doesn't pull any punches when it comes to tighter corners, and whilst it's a mostly flat circuit, the elevation change over the course of Bomb Hole Corner will catch our drivers out in the fact they'll go down into a depression and then come charging back on out, and we could see some drivers understeer wide there as they try to charge through turn number 11. But that is the circuit in terms of putting a picture. But as we always say, it's the case a picture may speak 1,000 words, but it's not the case. It doesn't compare to when we look at the live pictures. And we can see here as we look back to the Snetterton circuit right now, it is the case that we do currently have 10 drivers making their way to the circuit. But let's take you through our schedule for tonight in round number 4 of the Formula 4 Championship. It is the case that in approximately what will be 3.5 minutes time at 20 past 8 this evening British Summer Time, that's BST or UTC +1, we'll be getting underway with the qualifying session. 15 minutes while drivers will have every opportunity to set their best possible laps to form the grid for the purposes of race number 1. Race number 1 will immediately follow at approximately 25 to 9 this evening, and it will be the case that our drivers will be battling over 20 minutes to be the fastest out of the drivers, whether in their pack or overall. And you can imagine it'll be the case that nobody will be pulling any punches. There's no pit stops. It is a case of start to finish, all in, no holds barred action. And after that, we'll take a brief pause before building up to race number 2, which will follow after. That'll be at 9 o'clock, and that'll be another 20-minute race. But the difference is the grid for race number 2 will be set as a top 10 reverse grid from the results of race number 1. And then we'll have a brief pause after race number 2, which is another sprint. And it is the case that after race 2 and after the pause, we'll be going racing for our final race of this evening, race number 3 at 25 past 9 this evening, and that will be a 30-minute race with that all-important pit stop thrown in there. A bit more of a sprint feature rather than a dedicated sprint, and in the form of the grid there, it is the case it is a full reverse grid based on the race 2 results for the purposes of forming our grid in race number 3. But we do have 3 fantastic races lying in wait, and of course we should keep in mind that if our drivers do get a little bit contact happy or do decide to exploit the track limits a bit more than necessary, and Snetterton does invite run wide for a number of corners. If our drivers do try to push it as much as possible, it is the case that our drivers shall receive a drive-through penalty in a given race for 14 or more instants accrued. But with that, that's enough of the schedule, the rules and regulations. Let's take a look around and who's setting the fastest laps currently. And it looks as though it is Lee Aberdeen, our platinum driver here, as he makes his way down towards Hamilton Bend, coming up into what is turn number 5, and looking as though he's the fastest by a considerable margin right now, Lee Aberdeen, by a whole second almost over Harry Fox, as he makes his way up through Oggies and now up towards what is Williams Bend of turn number 8. But as he does so at this point, of course, practice time's not necessarily the ultimate indicator of how things come out. We've definitely seen that in the past here in the Formula 4 series. Indeed, another series hosted at UK Sim Racing, but you can imagine that Lee Aberdeen will be looking to put a stake in the ground, given that he is one of only 2 platinum drivers attending tonight. Meanwhile, it is the case we've got 3 gold drivers in attendance, including Chris Eddersford here, the UK Sim Racing founder, but meanwhile we also have 5 silver drivers in attendance: Paul Boucherat, Daniel Naggs, Kevin Wesley at Burke. We've also got Sidney Millen and also Craig Tilliston. So it's the case the silver class coming out in force. The gold class has got 3 drivers here and then 2 platinum drivers, but you can imagine our silver drivers in particular want to take the fight to our gold drivers, as Chris Eddersford there gets it a little bit wrong, making his way out of Agostini, just getting a little bit too aggressive with the throttle, but getting himself warmed up and trying to get some tyre temperature out there. It was a very pleasant afternoon, it must be said, at the Snetterton circuit. A bit of cloud, but also a bit of sunshine combines very well here on a circuit which can feel quite windy, given the fact that the surrounding land is very low cut. A lot of farmers' fields around the circuit, so there's nothing really to shield our drivers or indeed the circuit from any major winds blowing on in, and those could play a factor, particularly with regards to trying to deliver fast laps. If you get a burst of wind up behind the car going down, say, the back straight, or alternatively the start-finish straight, that may just help you on your lap or hinder your lap in terms of the fact you're driving against the wind and therefore you're not going to gain as much speed down the straights. But it will mean, of course, you can brake a little bit later into corners, given the wind is already doing a bit of partial braking for you, arguably. But as we see our drivers continue to make their way on around here, we do look to our chat and we do say hello there to 306 Rally. And big shame with turnout, says 306 Rally. I do agree with you, Rally. It is the case that we don't have that many drivers here, and it is a bit unfortunate given the fact we've seen such great racing over the course of the season so far. But that is the nature, of course, of it being the summer, and the fact that we do believe a lot of our drivers at the moment, our regulars, do seem to be either on holiday, alternatively having to deal with some personal circumstances, or it's the case they're just looking to have that summer holiday. Of course, it is understandable, but at the same time, upwards and onwards, and it is the case we do hope for some great racing today, and on top of that as well, plenty more rounds to go, and you never know what could happen. It may be only 10 or so drivers here today, but it could be the case that come round number 5, we may see them all come back out in their plenty. But Sydney Millen there will not be wanting to do that mistake plenty of times, which is to run very wide coming out of Agostini, because otherwise there's going to be plenty of damage to the car. But nonetheless, Millen makes their way back onto the circuit, and definitely one to watch in the silver class, a very fast driver. But as they roll their way through there, Oggie's definitely getting a bit wrong again, and Kevin Burke here, the British driver who's been really the back and forth with Sydney Millen all the way throughout. It is the case that Burke here today will be looking to try and make amends for what was a difficult time at Knockhill, but we did see how he changed his approach to Knockhill and it worked on out. But now we head into qualifying, and it is the case as we do wait for our drivers to make their way out of the pit lane here. In fact, we can see we've got Harry Fox already leaving. He's going to be, I think, our very first driver to head out of the pit lane, all of them making their way out in quick succession here. And to be fair, plenty of laps in order to be able to set a good qualifying time here, and with plenty of circuit available. The question you may ask at this point, well, there's only 10 drivers. Will we see them all stay close together and try and get the toe off for one another? It's an interesting question. The straights here, you do want the toe. The corners around here, particularly the infield, depends on how brave you are and how well you can gauge your distance to the driver in front, particularly with regards to, say, your one lap pace versus theirs. You may want to benefit from the toe, because the one thing you'll notice with regards to most of the corners here at Snetterton is whilst even with the infield, the corners are quite compact and also they are quite close together, there's plenty of run between each corner in terms of if you get a good exit, you can get a run on the next driver. And on top of that, look at the circuit width. The only corner where there's really limited circuit width, and that is by common sense logic rather than in terms of battling logic or the natural formation of the circuit, is firstly the run out of Oggie's here at turns 6 and 7, which we're seeing Harry Fox do, and also on top of that, the run through up towards Nelson Corner via Brundle turns 9 and 10, whereby there's only really one line through there, or if you're going to battle side by side, you really have to be side by side about 2/3 of the way down the Bentley straight in order to make the move, and that can be a challenge in of itself. So therefore it is the case here, but there being so much width to the circuit and also these straight runs between the corners, you can imagine some drivers may try to capitalise on a bit of toe as Harry Fox there outbrakes himself in to Nelson, just trying to lean a little bit too heavily on the brakes on this warm-up lap, and thankfully catching the car there when it could have gone so horribly wrong and off, but he's brought it back together. And as he makes his way around Coram, well, we're hoping that he makes it all the way through to the end of this warm-up lap, because we'd like to ride on board with him for the purposes of our first flying lap. And as he makes his way out the final corner, let's ride on board then and bring you our first flying lap, as brought to you by Harry Fox, the Platinum Class driver. Making his way across the timing line and down towards turn number 1 here. He'll be looking to his left-hand side for his brake marker, looking for the number 2 board there, then the number 1 board, and braking at about 60 metres. A bit of traffic in front of him though, which wasn't aware, and oh goodness me, that is going to be an aborted lap immediately, and that was very unfortunate. I think that was Sydney Millen just coming out of the pits there and being a little bit unaware of Fox, as we see there's somebody going very deep, and I believe that is Duncan Watts out braking themselves, and I think some drivers just overstepping the mark and getting caught up in amongst one another, and that will not have impressed a good number of drivers, to be fair, who are trying to go onto their initial flying laps. And indeed it does mean that we have to delay bringing you an onboard lap initially, because everybody was caught up in that, to be fair. And speaking of being caught up in incidents right now, Kevin Burt having a bit of a run wide there coming out to Nelson as we take a look back, and he does release, unless I'm very much mistaken, Paul Boucher here, our silver driver, through into Coram Corner. But as he rolls his way through the right hander here, the number 4 driver, and heading down towards the final quarter here, heading in towards what is Murray's, he now heads up through it, and let's see if we can get the onboard with Paul Boucher at this time as he heads down towards that timing line. As he builds his way up from the gearbox here, and really these have been the highest speeds that our drivers will achieve over the course of the lap, and breaking his way into Richards, looking for that left-hand board net and looking for the one board, so that'll be about 55 metres his breaking point. Gets a nice entry apex and a nice exit apex there as he heads out of Richards down into Wilson, braking at the 50 board once again, coming all the way down the gearbox to second gear, and as he brings the car on for a little bit wide for the apex curve, that could have been a bit tighter, but as he heads up now towards Palmer corner, a dab of the brakes here, staying in fourth gear, clipping the apex curve and using that to rotate the car through before getting back on the pound now, running down towards Agostini, down towards the turn 4 hairpin here, looking to his right for his brake marker and braking at about 60 metres, and as he rolls away through the left-hand hairpin in second gear, now building his way back up through the gearbox in towards Hamilton he goes, and here we need to rely on the downforce in the Formula 4, a lift of the throttle here in fourth gear, gets it nicely hooked up before heading down into Oggies, and as he breaks his way into turn 6 here, breaking down to third gear and immediately getting on the power here to widen the exit of the corner, and now heading into Williams Bend, turn number 8, you need to be on the throttle as soon as possible, but he takes a bit too much apex curve, and that's the lift out there to stay within track limits and make it a valid lap. Take the apex too early or get on the throttle too early, and the car gets forced out wide for understeer there, and it was a bit too much curve for Bouchard, saw the car drift wide, but now as he breaks his way through what is Rundle into Nelson here, nicely hooked up indeed, and that's exactly what you want. As soon as you clear the apex of Nelson, you've got to be on the throttle immediately. Now down into bomb hole corner, turn number 11, full commitment there, no flinching as he heads down into Coram, and here it's about just balancing the car through the corner in fifth gear, a lift of the throttle to go slightly beyond apex, then tuck the car back in to the right as he brakes and Murray's Bend down to third gear, drifts a little, goodness me, and just trying to take the car round a bit too quickly there through the corner, and that just shows you how easy it is to get it wrong coming out of Coram into Murray's, in the fact that what you've got to do is get the car over to the right, but in doing so you've got to stabilise the momentum of the car, and that's what Bouchard just got caught out by, as we do see Kevin Burke heading on down behind as the two drivers make their way to the timeline, and it will be an aborted lap for Bouchard. What about for Kevin Burke? Well, he has set a 158.158, the first lap set by one of our silver class drivers here today, and we've only got 10 minutes of the qualifying session left to go, and whilst in this case it's a 15-minute qualifying session, to see only 3 laps on the board so far, that is a little bit of a surprise, but will we finally see a full lap on the board with Harry Fox heading down towards the timing line here? And as he makes his way down at this point, crossing that line, and will it be a board lap, or will it be the case he has to go again? I believe it's an aborted lap. It is the fact that he's not going to be putting a lap on the board, and he will have to go again. As meanwhile, Sidney Millen crosses the line, in fact, just disappears beyond our camera's reach. But we see Millen going on to a lap here. We've got more laps coming on in from Chris Edisford here as he crosses that timing line, and also Nathan Scott. In fact, they're both on, well, in fact, Chris Edisford on an out lap. Duncan Watts, meanwhile, going P3 overall and in the gold class there on a 152.059. Craig Tiddleston finally setting a lap of what was a 152.319. Is he just very wide there? Goodness me, just missing the tyre barrier coming out to turn 1. I can tell you, it is the case at Rich's corner. You really want to try and take as much speed as possible through Rich's. It is a corner which, when you try to take it, it is one of those ones that invites you to be overconfident. But if you get a little bit too aggressive on that throttle or just carry too much speed on entry, you find the car just completely steps away from you, and that's exactly what we just saw there from Tiddleston. As meanwhile, Daniel Nags almost losing it, carrying a bit too much speed and running wide, and that's that fine balance you have to find here at Snetterton, is in terms of carrying speed through the corners, particularly those medium speed sweepers, versus being sensible. And a lot of our drivers, I think, just not quite finding that limit of speed at the moment, which again, it's good to be brave, but at the same time, if being brave does not enable you to set a lap time, then it's not worth it. Indeed, right now, Nathan Scott crossing line, he knows all about that as he goes on to another flying lap here in the number 13 car, and on a 1:49.368 at our current provisional pole lap overall. Excuse me, and in the gold class, it is the case he is 2.5 tenths faster than Chris Edisford, who is also in the 49s. Only 2 drivers in the 49s so far, Scott and Edisford, everybody else in the 52s or higher. But I think it is the case, a lot of our drivers still trying to find that rhythm here. And, well, speaking of finding that rhythm, he's just come across the line. He's 2.2 seconds faster than the rest of the field. Our platinum driver, Harry Fox, in the number 3 car, goes fastest and delivers. And, well, now can anybody respond to that? That will be the question. Now, you would expect that Lee Aberdeen would be the driver who responds, as we see him here making his way around in what is a little bit of a cultural movie time livery as he gets knocked there. Goodness me, and Kevin Burke coming in like a missile into Agostini. I think just completely locking up on the brakes, and the car just spearing into the back of Lee Aberdeen as he jumps to the pits. Or perhaps it's the case that Kevin Burke's not a fan of the Minions, because what we're trying to say is that is a Minions livery, of course inspired by Despicable Me, or the Minions movie, the second Minions movie that has recently come to cinemas in the UK and indeed around the world. And perhaps he's looking for something which is going to give him a bit of motivation to be a bit despicable out on circuit, hoping not too dirty, and that is to have the Minions on the car. But as we do see here, Nathan Scott making his way around in P2 right now, the number 13 driver. In this case, that number unlucky for some, but definitely not for Nathan Scott, as he rolls his way through Coram corner of turn number 12, and as he heads his way on through, you can see that transition of the car there and how it snakes under braking in to the final corner, and that's where he's got to get the car settled, and they've got to bring the car across from the run out of Coram and into the final bend. And as they make the way now down this start finish straight, will we see Scott improve and crosses that line? Will it be an improvement? I do not think so. No, it is not. But meanwhile, it is against the Paul Bouchard crosses the line there, and well, he sets what is a personal best of a 53.66. That puts him P6 overall, P2 in the silver class, and we've now got 6 minutes remaining in this session, as it is definitely the case that Paul Bouchard doing a very nice job at this time in rolling his way through the corners and keeping those laps on flowing. But as he makes his way on around right now, we do look to the Twitch chat, and if you are tuned in, do not be shy, feel free to say hi. It is the case that I think 306 Rally could do a little bit of company in there, as he has mentioned previously that we have to miss the next GT3 rounds in the UK Sim Racing GT3 League after next week's round at Sandown. Where is the case? When I say next week's round is being broadcasted next week, but it is the case the actual round itself is this coming Sunday. But it is the case as well, just to point out to you guys and girls, that if you do tune in to a UK Sim Racing on a regular basis and you're not subscribed to the Twitch channel, then why not subscribe today? It is the case you can keep up to date with all of our latest series as they're broadcast. Indeed, we have plenty of series week in, week out, and we've got plenty more scheduled for 2022, and you won't want to miss any of them. And on top of that as well, if you are a sim racer and you're looking to get your hands on some discounted sim racing coaching as made by Swilio Ameda, alternatively in terms of sim racing equipment as produced by the ultimate curator of sim racing equipment, and that is Race Anywhere, do go to our website uksimracing.co.uk, and it is the case that if you go to our affiliate page links, you're able to click on those links and be taken directly to the stores for our affiliates. And if you make a purchase via those links, it is the case you'll get a discount, which is great for you, and we also at UK Sim Racing Community get a kit back, which is great for us because it means that we can put on even more series for you guys and girls tuning in and racing week in, week out. It is the case here, we at UK Sim Racing are a non-profit organisation, so it is the case that every penny we make goes back into the series, and that's why we do encourage you to make purchases with our affiliates, because it is the case then we can put more funding into each and every league that we do produce, and even experiment with some ideas, some one-off events, specials throughout the year as well. But as we see at the time burning down here, Lee Aberdeen right now has not put a lap on the board, and I do wonder whether Lee Aberdeen has parked it in the pits for the time being, has decided he's going to start from the back of the field. Perhaps there's an issue with the car, but meanwhile it is the case that in terms of has anybody got close to Harry Fox, well, it has to be said our silver driver Paul Bouchard has found himself the closest challenger to our pole position driver by 8.5 tenths of a second. It is the case that Harry Fox has set a 147.114, meanwhile Paul Bouchard a 147.99, and that is absolutely brilliant for the silver driver, and it could bode well for the racing tonight, and the fact that he does seem within his class to be in a subclass of his own as he makes his way through the right-hander of Williams. But as he flows on through here with just over 3 minutes left on the board, charging on around, it is the case, can anybody in the silver class or indeed anybody else get themselves onto that front row or get close to it? That's the question, particularly with Bouchard being almost a second, in fact over a second faster than Nathan Scott, and then Nathan Scott has the long train of lap times behind him, as we see Bouchard going a little bit deep there into what was Nelson corner, and as he makes his way on through bomb hole, I think he'll be just breathing a sigh of relief as we see Kevin Burt there putting a time on the board of 55.857. That's only good enough for the last of our times registered so far down in P9, but as we continue to watch here, our silver provisional pole sitter making his way out of the final corner. Well, I think it's the case he's setting himself up for another lap. In fact, he comes into the pits here. He's decided enough's enough. But meanwhile, Duncan Watts makes his way on around here. And with Duncan Watts right now, P6 overall, P3 in the gold class, last of our gold drivers in this qualifying session. And can he improve come the run to the timing line this time? Well, he was on a personal best in Sector 2. As he completes that, his personal best in Sector 3. And he crosses the line. He moves up to P3 down to 48.765. So definitely improving. He's now only 8 tenths of Paul Bouchrat's P2 lap, but still 1.6 seconds off of our pole sitter, Harry Fox. And speaking of Harry Fox, he comes to the timing line here and he goes on to another lap. And let's ride on board with Harry Fox. He takes us around for one of the very last flying laps of this session as he makes his way through Richard's corner here. Goes a little bit deep through the corner, to be fair. He's going to lose some time in the run down towards Wilson as a result. He'll lose some speed, but as he breaks his way through the hairpin here and now makes his way out of the corner, using the full width of quarter exit to his advantage, and now heading down towards turn number 3. Trail braking in here. In fact, I think it's just a lift there rather than actually braking into turn number 3 by the sounds of things. And as he makes his way down towards Agostini at this point, heading into the turn 4 hairpin, looking to his right for his brake marker and braking as close as possible to the 50-metre board. And you can see that the car actually coming around sooner than he would have liked. He actually had to turn the car to the right on the steering wheel as he was trying to turn left. It was the case. The rear coming on around, really stepping around, which gives you an idea of just how aggressive Fox is having to drive this Formula 4. And as he rolls his way, oh goodness me, taking too much apex curve there at Oggies, and that is going to be in a lap aborted. He won't have time for another, but the good thing for him is I think he'll feel confident that he's not under any pressure to improve that lap, because right now we're not seeing anybody else set those time screens alight. The only person who was Harry Fox in Sector 1 before he got it wrong, and there is Nathan Scott deciding to go a little bit wide coming out of Williams Bend, and that is going to be an aborted lap. But meanwhile, we look to Duncan Watts here, who on his final flying, well, his penultimate flying lap of the session, we should say, he heads on out. And does he go past the pit entry? He does indeed. So he will go to one more lap with Duncan Watts. He heads on down towards turn number 1 here. And as he makes his way on through, will he now be able to improve as he goes into his final flying lap? And this will be the last flying lap of the session. I think we may have Craig Tillotson just creep onto our lap as well. Our P7 driver overall right now, as it is the case that Harry Fox will also just about make the cut. I think they've all just left it to the very last moment. Harry Fox does make it across the timeline with literally a second to spare, but it is the case that we have the 15 minutes up, so the qualifying session immediately ends. It is the case that we do not carry over the final laps, so in the end, let's take you through that grid for the purposes of race number 1. So it is the case of race number 1 of round 4 of the Formula 4 Championship, as hosted by UK Sim Racing on iRacing. Harry Fox taking that pole position in the end. The Briton will 1:47.141. He is joined on the front row by the silver driver, Paul Bouchrat, taking silver pole position versus the platinum pole position driver. And then we have Duncan Watts and Chris Edison on row number 2. The 2 gold drivers there, followed by Nathan J. Scott, the gold driver, starting off row number 3 in P5, being joined by Daniel Naggs in P6, the silver driver. Craig Tillotson and Sydney Millen line up on our fourth row, both silver drivers there, P7, P8, and then Kevin, Wesley Burke and Lee Aberdeen line up P9 and P10, and Lee Aberdeen not setting a lap time in the end due to difficulties in qualifying. I think he'll be starting from the back. It is the case. I think they've got the technical issues resolved, or I hope they've got them resolved, because we would love to see Lee Aberdeen take to the grid. The more the merrier. Indeed, Lee Aberdeen, one of those drivers we absolutely love to see go racing. But as our drivers are going through the gridding procedure at the moment, we are just waiting for that final countdown, if you will. It's approximately 30 to 40 seconds away, but we take a look to that grid. And indeed, here is Harry Fox, currently parked up on that front row. And as we do look to the blimp camera here, well, the blimp just been obscured a little bit by the paddock there, particularly what is the commentary booth. I can tell you, being in that hut, it is a case of looking on out. But as our drivers do wait to go racing here, we do look back down to the grid. We are waiting for Paul Bouchrat, Daniel Naggs. In fact, Naggs has just lined up on the grid, so it's Paul Bouchrat and Kevin Wesley Burke who we're waiting for. But then when they're ready, we will be going racing for 20 minutes in race number 1 at Snetterton 300. Well, the gridding procedure is complete. We've only got 8 drivers on the grid, and now we wait for the lights. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights, and it's lights out. Away we go for race number 1 here at Snetterton as all of our drivers get away. And it looks like Chris Edison there having a slow start compared to his peers. He's dropped a number of positions as they make their way down towards turn number 1. A little bit of a stall there, but meanwhile we can see battling in to the opening corners. We've got Craig Tillotson here battling with Lee Aberdeen. Lee Aberdeen getting up the inside into turn 1 through Rich's corner. But as they break their way on down in to Wilson hairpin, you can see it's case Nathan Scott going a bit deep into the hairpin and now being repassed by Duncan Watts, the We Went Car Racing driver, using the cutback there to his advantage. And Nathan Scott has to go defensive here through turn number 3, slightly in order to keep Daniel Nags at bay as they make their way down towards Agostini. No major incidents on the opening couple of corners, which is what we like to see. And as they make their way into turn number 4 here, will we see a peak from Daniel Nags? No, we do not see a peak, as we're hitting at Kevin Wesley Burke has now made his way out of the pit lane. They've got some technical issues with the car resolved just after the race start, and indeed it is the case. We do have 10 drivers heading out on Snetterton for the purposes of the race as they roll them through, although Kevin Wesley Burke I think still having more issues. He's just jumped back to the pits, but we see here Lee Aberdeen now tucked in behind Chris Eddersford as they make the way through Williams Bend and head up towards what is the Brundle Winter Nelson complex. And as they do, Lee Aberdeen getting a very good toe out of the corner and heading down towards where it's going to be side by side as they make their way down towards Brundle, and into the bend they go here. It's going to be Aberdeen on the inside, and Edison backs on out as he gains the place. A nice smooth pass there by Lee Aberdeen as we got a spin, and that is well, that's not Daniel Nags, my apologies, that is Duncan Watts who's gone for a spin, and we'll take a look very shortly what exactly has happened as he spins it back round. But that is a frustrated Duncan Watts after what was a very good start. But meanwhile, leading the way, almost 4 seconds clear already, is Harry Fox here as he makes his way down towards the timing line. And as he does, the number 3 driver here is pulling a gap to the field, and he's only going to increase it. So Harry Fox, who leads overall in the platinum class after lap 1, followed by Nathan Scott being pursued as the gold leader by our silver leader Daniel Nags in P3, then Lee Aberdeen P4, Chris Eddersford P5 as this pack of 4 drivers make their way into Rich's Bend. We then have Craig Tillotson in P6 leading ahead of City Million P7, Paul Bouchard P8, and then Duncan Watts P9. And then we have Kevin Wesley Burke, who is still in the pit lane having a number of technical issues. It's Kevin Wesley Burke as we're hearing that City Million has gone off circuit, and Paul Bouchard here having to go defensive as we've got off circuit as well. Craig Tillotson there, and Tillotson almost spins it round coming out of Wilson. In this case, a number of drivers here really being caught out by the Snetterton circuit in the Formula 4s as they make their way on through. But we look from them to Daniel Nags, who's battling side by side right now with Chris Eddersford, and he goes for a spin out of Agostini, and that is very unfortunate for Daniel Nags, who I think was just carrying a bit too much momentum for the car. But meanwhile, Lee Aberdeen up the inside there of Nathan Scott and moves up into P2. And now Lee Aberdeen, we started from the back, he's going hunting and he's going after Harry Fox, who is 5 seconds up the road. As Chris Eddersford there takes a spin of his own, and that is very unfortunate. Chris Eddersford going for a spin coming out of the Oggies corner and up into Williams Bend, but he'll still hold into the gold lead, but he'll now drop back to the likes of Bouchard and also Nags, and definitely a lot of spins, a lot of highs and lows for our mixture of drivers here as they head on down the Bentley straight, and Paul Bouchard makes his way up into P3. He's on the inside there as they head underneath the bridge, and behind him, we'll try to make it 3 wide, is Daniel Nags there. But I think Nags in the end is going to have to back out. He's going to make Chris Eddersford go defensive, and we ride on board. Oh, goodness me, and that is Paul Bouchard getting it wrong, and Daniel Nags had to take to the grass in order to keep the car safe. But Paul Bouchard with the spin there, where he's been able to keep it parked whilst everybody else has made their way around. But we've got a number of incidents to take a look back at, and we start off with what happened to Duncan Watts only moments ago. Well, it is the case. Apologies there, ladies and gentlemen. We do have a slight delay to ticking over on the replay, but we do take a look back, and this was Duncan Watts who had the spin on the opening lap as he made his way through what was the Nelson Bend and just simply getting too much power down on the exit curb, and the car went round, and then he had to let everybody in through. But we do return to the live pictures right now, and as we do, the racing continues here, and Duncan Watts running last of our runners now as he heads down towards turn number 1. But as he does, we look up to Daniel Nags here by comparison, who running in P7, the Britain, holding off with Paul Bouchard, and indeed it has been up and down in terms of the places, and Bouchard and Nags being up in the top 5 at one point now find themselves all the way down in P7 and P8 respectively, and we're not even 5 minutes into this race. In fact, it is the case, the race coming in at 15 minutes by the looks of things, rather than 20 minutes. We have had a slight shortening of the race duration by the looks of things, unless that's a glitch in our timing tower at the top of our screen. We'll let you know about that. But it is the case here that Daniel Nags making his way out of the inside there, and goodness me, that was, I believe that was Craig Tillotson going very deep, coming out of what was Agostini into Hamilton, and well, there's Sidney Millen moving into position, and Daniel Nags gaining 2 places to 1. Meanwhile, Paul Bouchard only gaining the 1 over Tillotson, but it's all kicking off between our silver drivers, and our silver class, to be fair, has perhaps been the one with the most battling over the course of the season, although the platinum class, to be fair, would argue that they had the greatest amount of battling at Alton Park, and I can't disagree with that. But as they make the way down this time, it is the case of Sidney Millen now up against a familiar foe in the form of Paul Bouchard as they make the way down towards what is now also a lock up there for Sidney Millen as they broke their way down through a Brundle, and as they do now, it is the case they make the way through Bomb Hole, and well, Paul Bouchard says I'm going to go around the outside and gets it done around the outside. Now that was confidence from Paul Bouchard, and that's exactly what you need to do. As meanwhile, Chris Eddersford is into the pit, and well, I wonder what's happened to Chris Eddersford, because we wouldn't be expecting a pit stop here. Has the flat spoiler punctured the tyre? It is the case, he's on in, and that is going to drop him all the way down the field as our drivers make the way on around. But as they do, we see Craig Tillotson here trying to close on the back of Millen as they make the way down the start-finish straight, and as they head to riches this time around, we ride on board here with Tillotson, who puts that pressure on, charging on through down towards what is Wilson hairpin. But the thing is, of course, we've seen time and time again that it's about keeping the composure first and foremost and balancing the car before being aggressive with the car. We saw it at Knock Hill in the silver class, while silver class drivers, all of them, made mistakes, was sitting in race number 1, and in the end, if my memory serves me correctly, it was Kevin Wesley-Burke who calmed it down in the last 2 races and therefore picked up the big results by simply just driving the car within a defined set of speed limits, if you will. And as we see here, Tillotson just leaving the door open for Duncan Watts to come on through. We do look back to the external pictures here, and it is the case that Duncan Watts, well, after that major moment, is now trying to make his way back up the order as he heads his way into Oggies, and as he rolls his way through the right-hander of turns 6 and 7, Froggies and up into Williams. His next target will be Sidney Millen, of course, but meanwhile our gold leader of Nathan Scott is all the way up the road in P3 as our 2 platinum class drives. To give you an update, Harry Fox is still your leader. Lee Aberdeen has brought the gap down from 5 seconds to 4.7 seconds, but the gap is not moving rapidly. And then I say that, what on earth has happened here? Well, it's the case that Harry Fox is going very slowly. I think there's been a slowdown penalty for Harry Fox. It is the case. In fact, he's had an off track, and well, that was an absolute disaster. And let's take a look at what happened very shortly to Harry Fox. Well, this was Harry Fox making his way out of Coram and down towards what was the final corner, and he went for a spin there, did Harry Fox, and that explains the story. He span coming out of what was Murray's Bend, and as he got it pointed back in the right direction, then we caught Lee Aberdeen going round and taking the lead of this race. Well, that is a bit of drama there, and now Harry Fox, who our fastest driver, of course, able to put that pole lap in. Can he close down Lee Aberdeen as we return to live pictures here, having cleared the opening half of this race? Well, we'll have to wait and find out. But Harry Fox right now has given himself a much tougher job to do after he seems to be cruising away at the front of the field. But meanwhile, we must look from Harry Fox to Lee Aberdeen, and here is our leader, the Minions Mobile, as he makes his way out of Oggies and up towards Williams. And as he does, well, the lap times between the two of them have been pretty similar. Harry Fox, to be fair, whilst he has been matching Lee Aberdeen for most of the laps, Lee Aberdeen, in fact, in the last couple of laps, excluding the one where Fox had the spin, Aberdeen has been outpacing Fox by a tenth or two a lap. But meanwhile, we can tell you, with all this going on, we've had an off track for Sidney Millen, and in this case, Chris Eddersford has found their way past the Frenchman, and we do see the Briton here, Chris Eddersford, the UK Sim Racing founder, with Sidney Millen tucked in behind. And well, they're down in P9 now, last of the running positions out on the circuit as we currently understand it, although we are missing our circuit map by the looks of things. That's decided to hide itself, so we will make sure that reappears for you. Apologies about that, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, it's the case our circuit map has just been slightly glitched, as meanwhile that's not a glitch, that's Sidney Millen into the wall, and goodness me, Millen with a major whack to the wall, and that is a disaster. Let's take a look back at exactly what happened to Sidney Millen. As they're making their way out of what was their Hamilton Bend and heading through Oggies. Oh, goodness me, trying to get the power down, and the car snapped, and Sidney Millen jump into the pit lane there, and well, just getting the car too out of sorts, the composure of the car going and straight into the wall. But meanwhile, we look back here to Lee Aberdeen, who charges his way on through, and as he heads down and around through what is there, the left hand of Palmer Corner. Back to line pitches now. It is a case of Lee Aberdeen pressing on, and well, he has got a sizable, in fact, a growing gap to Harry Fox. A gap that's up to 3 seconds since we last checked it. And Harry Fox, in fact, I think has had a spin. There's Kevin Wesley Burke, who's had a spin there coming out of what we do believe was, coming out of Agostini as Fox here makes his way into Oggies. But it is the case Harry Fox has just had a moment out on circuit. What exactly happened? Well, this was heading his way through Rich's corner, and as he did here, heading down into what was Wilson Bend, now into the hairpin. What goes wrong here? Is it just having a braking right? Oh, no, it was a lock up there on what was the front right, and the car just coming around aggressively and having to stop the car, as it was the case, otherwise that would have gone for a further spin, and Harry Fox in the end pushing it hard, but I think pushing it too hard in the end, and that is why the gap to Lee Aberdeen has opened up so dramatically as we return to live pictures, and as he makes his way on around at this point, it is the case that Harry Fox right now definitely in a bit of no man's land. The fact that 3.6 seconds off of Lee Aberdeen, but the best part of what is 20 seconds ahead of P3 driver Nathan Scott, who we look to here as he makes his way coming out of what is Nelson Corner and into a bomb hole with now 4 minutes of racing left, plus also the final lap, and Nathan Scott pushing on, charging on through what is at Coram Corner and heading down towards the left-hander. And that is, of course, there down at Murray's. But as he does, all he needs to do is keep it together. As we're hearing that Sidney Millen still in the pits. And in fact, Kevin Burt has now moved up to P9. Sidney Millen, the last star runners in the pit lane with that repair work, of course, with the wheel coming off the car with that major whack to the wall coming out of Oggies. But as we look to Nathan Scott rolling through here, it's Paul Boucherat who leads the silver class by only 1 second over Daniel Naggs. And Daniel Naggs right now really pushing on as they make the way through turn number 1 and down towards 2. And can Naggs come back at Boucherat on the final couple of laps? Well, the lap times would say no. It is the case that Boucherat, that last lap was a 1/10 of a second faster than Naggs, and therefore if that trend were to continue, Naggs would fall backwards. But given the rate of attrition we have seen here already in race number 1 and the likelihood of spins left, right and centre, so we'll see, it is the case that we could see an upset at any moment. Indeed, Daniel Naggs just needs to keep behind his rival here, and somebody could drop it at any moment. Of course, we're not wishing for that. We don't want to put the commentator's curse on anyone, but it is the case that indeed, much like at Knock Hill, anything can happen before that checkered flag is taken, and right now Daniel Naggs will know all about that, and he just needs to keep it smart as he rolls his way through Oggies this time, where it's for the 7th time of asking, and heading out of Williams Bend now and on to the Bentley Straight. But Duncan Watts, meanwhile, making his way for the We Went Car Racing team through turn 6 and 7 into 8, and gradually trying to close up to the likes of Nathan Boucherat, but actually lapping a bit slower than them at the moment. I think Duncan Watts just trying to get a bit of composure and calm things down after the difficulties early on in this race, as we do see Watts heading on down. And to be fair, in P2 in the gold class here, and a good amount ahead of Chris Eddersford by 11 seconds, and Eddersford the last of the gold runners, and between the two of them, Craig Tillotson here, as we do see the British driver making his way into turns 9 and 10, and as he flows his way on through what is the trail braking zone of Brundle into Nelson, it is the case that Tillotson doing a very nice job here recovering this race, albeit I think he would have been hoping he could have been battling for the win in the silver class. Instead, he finds himself the best part of 17 seconds off the lead of the silver class. But as the laps continue to tick down here, well, the time more so ticks down, and the laps with it is the case we do look to our race leader here, Lee Aberdeen, who continues to open up his advantage. In that last lap, he added another 4 tenths of advantage to Harry Fox. And well, where is Harry Fox? I hear you ask. Well, here is P2 driver Harry Fox, the 2 platinum drivers P1, P2, but right now Harry Fox in the 2nd place position versus his rival, and indeed only falling a bit further back after what was looking to be a very strong start to the race. But in the end, Lee Aberdeen cutting his way through the field, and Harry Fox making that critical error coming out of what was Murray's corner, the final corner, which saw him lose the position, and since then he's been on the back foot in this race. But meanwhile, the rivalry for the silver lead between Paul Boucherat and Daniel Naggs, I can tell you as it stands, that gap has now opened up to 2.5 seconds. It opened up by a whole 1.1 seconds on that last lap, and it is continuing to open up as Boucherat makes his way through what is Williams. But meanwhile, Chris Eddersford, oh goodness me, Chris Eddersford I think with a spin there, what was Agostini. We take a look back. This was only moments ago, and as he made his way down into the braking zone for Agostini hairpin, I'm going to get the feeling the car's going to come very aggressively round on the corner exit. Well, it does indeed, but in fact, it looked very smooth, and then the car seemed to go, and I think it may be the case just getting a bit too much throttle down in the late stage of that exit. But Edison, in fact, getting the car back together rather rapidly and bringing it back onto the circuit. But as we look back to live pictures right now, with 10 seconds left in this race, Lee Aberdeen has just gone on to the final lap. It is the case, he's gone on to a 9th and final lap, as meanwhile Harry Fox has had another moment down at Wilson from what we're hearing, and it is the case that gap has opened up to a further 7.5 seconds now. It was when we previously looked, of course, in the region of 5, but that gap continues to open, and this is Lee Aberdeen's race to lose at this point as they make their way on through this final lap. But as they do, we do look here from Harry Fox, who runs a bit wide. Oh, goodness me, Fox really pushing the limits there. I think he might be trying to push the limits now, knowing he can finish P2, so that way he knows how hard he can push come race number 2, when he'll be going toe-to-toe with Lee Aberdeen from the back of the grid. Remember, it's the top 10 reverse for race number 2's grid, and that means, effectively, with only 10 drivers, it's a full reverse grid, and therefore our 2 platinum drivers will be on that final row, and it'll be a great battle to see. And indeed, as you say, the 306 rally, it could have been a great battle in this race if Harry Fox had not had the spin, but we are going to see a great battle, hopefully, in race number 2, presuming both drivers get through the opening lap safe and sound. But as Lee Aberdeen here makes his way through bottom hole corner, heading in towards Coram, he doesn't need to do any fancy doings at this point. It is the case, he's delivered the goods lap after lap, and as he makes his way through what is the final corner, he heads down towards the start finish line. The checker flag awaits him, and it will be Lee Aberdeen from the United Kingdom who takes the win overall and in the platinum class in race number 1 here at Snetterton in emphatic fashion, as he heads down towards Richards Corner to celebrate. Meanwhile, Harry Fox here, after a great start and a pole lap that was well deserved, it is the case in the end a number of mistakes have cost him dearly. He will finish P2 when all is said and done, P2 overall and in class as he crosses the line, the platinum driver. But then we look to Nathan Scott here, who makes his way down towards the timing line, and he will take the win in the gold class, and also an overall 3rd place on the overall podium ahead of Paul Bouchard, who comes home P4. Your silver winner here is the Briton, and Daniel Nags comes on through P5, and then it will be Duncan Watts who then comes on through to take P6, 2nd place in the gold class here for the 83 driver in a difficult race. He'll look to bounce back in the next race. Then we do have, making his way on down, Craig Tillotson here, who will come on home in P7 as he charges to the checker flag here ahead of Chris Edisford. So P7 to Tillotson, then it is going to be Edison P8, and then Kevin Burke P9, 2 laps down, and Sidney Millen in the end with that crash into the wall at what was Oggie's Bend, not able to finish the race, having to finish in the pits 4 laps down. And well, now we wait for the grid to be formed for the purposes of race number 2, and as it is, let's take you through the race number 2 grid. So a full reverse grid effect here, or a top 10 reverse, but it's a full reverse with only 10 drivers present. Sidney Millen then lines up on pole, the silver driver being joined by Kevin Wesley Burke, P2. Then Chris Edison lines up gold pole, P3, followed by Craig Tillotson on the same row, P4. And then on our 3rd row, Duncan Watts and Daniel Nags, followed by Paul Bouchard and Nathan J. Scott. And then we have Harry Fox and Lee Aberdeen on our 5th row, our 2 platinum drivers looking to go toe-to-toe in race number 2. And well, the gridding process is underway currently, and we'll have to wait and see how it will all play out over the course of another, what I think is going to be another 15 minutes of race. And I do believe the races have been shortened from 20 minutes to 15 minutes, unless I'm mistaken. But we will find out in due course, as that grid is being set here for race number 2 of round 4 of the Formula 4 Championship. The grid is set, and now we wait for the lights. And it's lights out, away we go here, where a number of drivers jump into the pits on not making the grid. It was Kevin Burke in the end who took away from pole position. And as he makes his way down towards turn number 1, we see Harry Fox leaving from the pit lane. Millen and Tillotson have both not been able to make the grid and have retired from this race, unfortunately. And with Burke going a little bit deep there to the opening corner, Edison and Watts coming through, Daniel Nags as well. And there you can see Kevin Wesley Burke out braking himself, locking up the brakes into Wilson, but brings it together nicely. And Nathan Scott moves up to P5 with Paul Bouchard in P6, and in fact Lee Aberdeen P6, he goes up the inside of Paul Bouchard in to Willis Palmer corner there. It's all toss and turn as they make the way now down towards Agostini. But as they do, will we see a move here between Scott and Burt? That we do indeed. Nathan J. Scott up the inside, and Kevin Burt there leaves the door open. He doesn't defend. He doesn't have time to react to defend. And now Burt's got the pressure of Lee Aberdeen behind us. We right on board here with Lee Aberdeen as he tries to find a way past another driver, move up to P5. But can he? Won't be going for it on the brakes into Oggies. There's no place to do so. It's a very tight apex at Oggies' corner. But he can get a good exit out of Oggies and into Williams. This is where he'll be looking to build up the momentum. He gets a nice apex there. This is going to be a straightforward run on Ken Wesley Burke. Will Burke be able to defend? All we can do is hang outside to inside here as they drag their race their way down towards what is the braking zone for the purposes of Murray's corner, and Brundle corner I should say, and as they make their way into the left-hander, Lee Aberdeen goes up the inside of Kevin Wesley Burke into P5 and collects it very nicely as he makes his way out to Nelson. Another place gain for the Platinum driver. Harry Fox by comparison starting from the pit lane up to P8 already, with Millen and Tillerston retiring, not able to make the grid. But meanwhile we can see here, we look to the battle in the silver class of P6 overall, and there's Kevin Wesley Burke going a bit deep at Coram, and as a result he'll be on the inside there in to Murray's corner. But Paul Bouchard sticking to his guns there and going round the outside for P6. That's P2 in the silver class as they make their way across the timeline. But after one lap, it is Chris Edison who leads, followed by Duncan Watts in P2, Daniel Nags in P3, Nathan Scott P4, then we have Lee Aberdeen P5, followed by Paul Bouchard in P6, then we've got Kevin Wesley Burke P7, and then Harry Fox, last of our runners out on the circuit, in P8, with Millen and Tillerston not taking to the grid for this race due to damage with the car, particularly Millen's car with that wax to what Oggies. They've got a lot of repair work to do, but as they make the way out of Wilson Bend this time and down towards Palmer Corner, it is the case in this 15-minute race, rolling the way through the left-hander. Harry Fox at this point tucked in behind Ken Wesley Burke and trying to get on the offensive. Meanwhile, Lee Aberdeen up the inside here of Nathan J. Scott for P4. And the Platinum driver comes on through and gets the move done. And indeed, Lee Aberdeen definitely delivering the goods time and time again. But speaking of delivering the goods, here we've got Harry Fox trying to make the move for P7 on Kevin Wesley Burke. And we ride on board the gearbox here of Burke, as in fact the move's going to be made already. Oh, goodness me! And Burke taking a bit too much grass on entry there. The car siphoning across the road. And Harry Fox doing very well to react. But meanwhile, we must look to our leaders here with Chris Edison going slowly down the Bentley straight. And this is going to open up everything. Duncan Watts has already come through. Now Daniel Nags and Lee Aberdeen split the seas around Chris Edison, but in the end neither of them are daring to try and go either the inside or outside of Edison. Oh, and that's Duncan Watts off, coming through and out of what is their Nelson corner, and Harry Fox has to react, and Duncan Watts once again from a commanding position makes a mistake that drops him all the way down the field. Well, my goodness, it is the case that we've had plenty of drama, and we'll have to take a look back at exactly what happened very shortly. But right now, with everything that's happened, it's now Daniel Nash, your silver driver, who leads this race overall ahead of Lee Aberdeen and Nathan Scott. Question is, how long will it be before Lee Aberdeen or Nathan Scott say that they want a shot at the lead of the race? Well, I think Daniel Nash here would love to win this, but he's got a long way to go if he's going to bring home the win. He's going to start going defensive already, given the fact that Lee Aberdeen is only 2 tenths away and taking a little bit of a cheeky peek there as they make the way into Wilson. In fact, Lee Aberdeen having to go offensive, defensive. In fact, he had to put it on the inside in order to be able to defend versus Nathan Scott, but in return now he's putting Daniel Nags under a lot of pressure here as they make the way through turn number 3, through Palmer Corner, and as they make the way out to left-hander and down towards where's Agostini for what is the third time of asking. Will we see a move under braking here? No, Lee Aberdeen stays back, but Nags goes a little bit deep. But to be fair, you can go deep into Agostini in order to get the sling round up towards Hamilton, and that's exactly what Nags has done. He's used a better exit out of the corner rather than a better average apex speed in order to stay ahead for the time being. But Lee Aberdeen, of course, will be wary of the fact that Nags is having to throw everything in the book right now to hold on. But as they make their way into Williams Bend, Lee Aberdeen, I think, is going to try and trivialise this, much like he did with Kevin Wesley Burke earlier. A good exit out of what was Williams' corner, but you can see Nags weaving down the straight here, making a late weave, which he's allowed to do. It wasn't the case that was side by side to get Lee Aberdeen to essentially be on that inside to outside run into what was their Nelson corner. But in the end, Lee Aberdeen just fully committing, and Daniel Nags losing the position. He drops down to P2, and now he's got Nathan Scott. Remember, it's overall position he's lost, not class position. Daniel Nags being our silver leader still, with his next rival being in P5, that's Paul Bouchard. But right now, Daniel Nags battling with platinum and gold leaders in the form of Aberdeen in the platinum class, who's gone on ahead, and Nathan J. Scott behind, as we see Nags there locking up a bit into what was Murray's corner. He's brought the car through the corner. He hasn't run wide. He's just about kept it on track. But Nathan Scott says, thank you very much. Don't mind if I do, as he gets the run. But meanwhile, Harry Fox here battling side by side with Paul Bouchard as they head across the timeline and getting the better run out of the final corner, and Fox up into that P5. Paul Bouchard lies in wait behind now as they roll their way through Richard's corner once again, and as they do, the place has been exchanged, and Paul Bouchard down to P6 as he'll be looking to try and close on to Daniel Nags. And in terms of lap times right now, I can tell you that Daniel Nags, with all the fighting, has lost a lot of time, as we're hearing that Kevin Wesley Burke is into the pit lane. It has gone wrong for Kevin Burke, and with the number 5 driver here making his way on through, is there an issue with the car perhaps, or well, is there something else entirely as he comes on in? But as he does, we do look to our race leader right now, and that is Lee Aberdeen, who is gradually breaking away from the rest of the pursuing pack as he heads on through what is Hamilton Bend and up towards Oggies. But as he does, it is the case, still battling for a spot on the overall podium is Daniel Nags. But the thing is, he's now got Chris Eddersford, who is closing gradually, and we ride on board here with Chris Eddersford as they make their way out of Williams corner. We're getting Lee Aberdeen just had a slight off track at this corner, but to be fair, it's not going to cost him too much in the grand scheme of things, given that Lee Aberdeen is a good chunk of time, in fact 2 seconds ahead of the rest of the pack. And Chris Eddersford at this point, I think, focusing more on just keeping it together. He's got Harry Fox close behind as the drivers roll their way through what is the Brundle into Nelson complex, and we look from the gearbox now of Chris Eddersford here, the UK Sim Racing founder, as he has the pressure of Harry Fox behind him. Fox inching closer as they emerge from the bomb hole and heading into Coram here. But Chris Eddersford, can he keep his cool under pressure? Well, Fox is building a lot of momentum as they make their way through Murray's. Eddersford takes a bit too much apex curve there. You can see it bump the car suspension up, and that bump has caused him to lose some momentum. But as they make their way down the start-finish straight here onto another lap, they go on to lap number 5. It's side by side. Eddersford will defend into Riches on the left of your picture. Fox on the outside, and Fox is going to try and commit all the way around the outside. This is brave stuff from the number 3 driver as they head on through, but still Eddersford defends well here, heading down into Wilson hairpin now. Eddersford will make it too wide into the hairpin. Fox will look to try and get the better exit here. They make the way out. They're still side by side with Fox having the room to build up speed. Eddersford's on the outside now. Fox had the inside of Palmer. They make the way through, too wide still. That's 3 corners now. They've been too wide. They continue down towards Agostini, and Harry Fox backing out a little bit by the looks of things. Or is he just trying to lull Chris Eddersford into a full sense of security? No, he backs out. I think Fox feels as though, in fact, he needs to wait from the run out of Williams onto the back straight, onto the Bentley straight to get it done. But Chris Eddersford, whilst he had a difficult race number 1, he does seem to be a bit more hooked up now in race number 2. And Eddersford doing a great job of defending versus Harry Fox. For how long, of course, is the question before Fox finds a way to get through the armour of Chris Eddersford. But for the time being, that armour is strong, and the gold driver is holding off the platinum driver. And now as they make the way down the back straight here, Eddersford puts the car in the middle of the road initially before weaving over to the natural racing line, which is the left from our picture, but the right from the driver's perspective. Harry Fox takes a little bit of a dummy there, but it is the case he can't get Eddersford to quickly pull a defensive move, as Eddersford loses the rear slightly as they come out of the right hand of Nelson and side by side through bomb hole. And Chris Eddersford making a small mistake, and that's all Harry Fox needs to go for the move. They head through Coram, and surely it's not going to be the case that Eddersford's going to hold this all the way around the outside to inside. He does. He locks up the brakes though, and in the end that is what gives Harry Fox the opportunity to come through for P4. But a brilliant side-by-side battle between the two of them. Indeed, great respect shown, and now Chris Eddersford will have a bit of a flat spot on that front left tyre from his perspective as the driver, and now he's got Paul Bouchard who's saying, well, I want a bit of this. If we're going to race side by side all the way around the lap, don't mind if I do. And I think Chris Eddersford at this point is going to be saying to himself, right, we've had our side by side fun, let's break away from Paul Bouchard, if he can break away from the silver driver, of course, as they make their way through Wilson here with just over 5 minutes left. And as they head down towards Palmer Corner this time, it is the case we look from them to the battle for P2. Now as our P2 and P3 drivers, and Nathan Scott and Daniel Nags make the way out to Palmer and down towards Winners Agostini hairpin at this point. It is the case that Nathan Scott, whilst he was looking good on the pace previously, Daniel Nags has closed. The fastest lap in this race, I should update you, has just been improved by Lee Aberdeen, your race leader, to 1:46.87. To put that in perspective, Lee Aberdeen is lapping on average 2 seconds faster than the rest of the field right now. It is the case, I think Lee Aberdeen is on an absolute tear, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the rest of the field is in a right knife fight right now with regards to battling for the best of the rest in that P2, with Nathan Scott being in the foreground of that battle in terms of that P2 position. And in fact, as they make the way underneath the bridge this time, you'll see a bit further back there, Chris Edisford battling side by side with Paul Bouchard for P5. It's the case that Edisford running deep and wide coming out of turn number 8, but he goes side by side through the Brundle into Nelson Complex, and in the end Edisford did very well there to hook that up under braking on what was that outside to inside defensive line, a very tricky line to try and hold, but Paul Bouchard in the end having the commitment to stay around what was the inside to outside through what was there Nelson and getting the move done. But indeed it is the case as Paul Bouchard takes a little bit too much speed for the apex of Murray's and spins the car. He parks up, lets Watson Edisford through, and that's very unfortunate for Bouchard. In fact, he made that move and he's got it all to do again, but meanwhile batting with Harry Fox here, it is Daniel Nags, and Harry Fox finds his way on through, and I do believe that these two have been exchanging places quite recently in fact, and as they make the way under braking into Wilson Bend, it is the case that Daniel Nags finally falls off of the overall podium after Harry Fox gets the move done for P3. But as they roll their way through Palmer now, it is the case that Harry Fox wants to go one better. He will want to now go hunting after Nathan Scott for P2, again to be the best of the rest in the Platinum class, with only 2 Platinum class drivers here, but also the best of the rest overall. Lee Aberdeen seemingly on a world of his own, but right now can Harry Fox find his way past Nathan Scott? And we do know that Nathan Scott, a very strong defensive driver. He will not let things go once he's got the bit between his teeth, but he's going to have to really think about this, because Harry Fox behind right now is closing menacingly, and indeed Nathan Scott, if he looks in his rear view mirrors, he'll see a view that's very similar to this, which is he has got the fast charger and Harry Fox inching closer and closer, corner by corner, straight by straight, and as they make the way down the back straight here, heading up towards what is the Brundle Nelson Complex, you can see Fox takes a peek. He's not close enough this time. Oh goodness me, it was very close there as they made their way through, breaking in fact. Harry Fox gets it wrong and goes for a spin, just trying to carry too much momentum, and goodness me, Harry Fox as he returns, Duncan Watts has to take evasive action there with Harry Fox rejoining the circuit, but they all make it safely. But in the end, Fox just carrying too much momentum. Let's take a look back. Well, this was only moments ago, and as we ride on board here with Harry Fox, we'll see under braking, the car's just unsettled. He's tried carrying too much momentum into the apex there of Nelson in battling so closely with back of Nathan Scott, and in the end the car's just come loose on him. It's a pendulum effect, if you will, and we saw that in the early stages of qualifying for a number of drivers, and now as we return to our live pictures, we've seen it under race conditions for Harry Fox, just in terms of trying to settle the car down, and that is the riding on the edge or driving on the edge that you have to do in these Formula 4s. It is the case they're very light cars. They rely on their aero as much as in terms of the tyre grip afforded to them, and the driver has to know where the weight is going in the car in order to settle it down. And Harry Fox just having the weight come around too fast on him in the end, losing out those places. But as we do look to him making his way now through Palmer Corner here, and what is the penultimate lap of this race, it is the case he'll be looking to find his way past Duncan Watts, the P5 as a minimum, as compensation for what has been a difficult race number 2. As he heads out the corner at this point, I can tell you that Kevin Resley-Burke has retired from this race after that early shunt. It is the case that our P8 silver driver has retired P8, and therefore we only have 7 drivers out on the circuit, with the time remaining with a minute left on the clock. And well, the time being counted down, Lee Aberdeen right now making his way up towards Nelson Bend, so he's almost through this lap and onto the final one. Meanwhile, Harry Fox here charging down the back straight, tucked in behind Duncan Watts. And will this just be a formality here as they get halfway down the straight and heading in to Wiz Brundle Corner? And as they do, Fox is going to be on the inside to outside line. Duncan Watts gives him the space and in the end makes the move. But meanwhile, who's that parked up? That is Nathan Scott, and Nathan Scott in an uncharacteristic error has had an off track at what is Nelson. Let's take a look back. Well, this was only moments to go for Nathan Scott, and as he made his way under brake in there into Brundle, the car was coming loose as he got it set up for Nelson, and you could see there that Daniel Nags almost followed with him, just carrying way too much speed under braking into Nelson, and the car coming free, and that was very unfortunate for Nathan Scott after what was looking to be a very deserved P2, but his loss is Daniel Nags' gain. And right now, Daniel Nags, well, he won't be taking the overall win, but I think for him, this is going to feel like a win, given the fact that he's going to be finishing P2 overall, best of the rest, and the winner in the silver class. And the only driver who's beaten him is the driver who's on a different planet by looks of things altogether, and that's Lee Aberdeen. Although I say that, it is the case that Harry Fox, now that he's back up to speed, is starting to lap on similar pace to Lee Aberdeen. So therefore, I think Harry Fox has got the pace to take the fight to Lee Aberdeen if he doesn't make the mistakes here. But Snetterton, to be fair, not just for Fox but for everybody, has really caught our drivers out. Lee Aberdeen has yet to make a major mistake, and Daniel Nags seems to be calming his mistake limit down in terms of just making sure to keep it smooth, and he's being rewarded for it. But meanwhile, we look here to Harry Fox, who has found his way past Duncan Watts since we cut away from him. He's up to P4, and with now this being the final lap, of course, on lap number 9 for all of our drivers, they make their way down onto the Bentley straight for the final time of asking here in race number 2. Fox is inching ever closer to the back of Chris Eddersford, and as they head down and around up towards what is the Brundle to Nelson complex, Fox will be looking here to try and get one more late move as he heads down into braking zone. In fact, we've got off tracks left, right and centre, but meanwhile we must look to Lee Aberdeen here, who as he makes his way out to the final corner is going to make it 2 out of 2. He will come to line, your winner, taking the checkered flag in the Platinum class and overall in race number 2 here at the Snetterton 300 circuit for round 4 of the UK Sim Racing at Formula 4 Championship. And then it will be Daniel Nags, who despite an off track right at the end, we didn't see on camera, will survive to come home P2 overall, winning the silver class. And then it will be Harry Fox who makes his way across the line to complete the overall podium P3. And then Duncan Watts, in a surprise last minute overtake with Chris Eddersford going off circuit, will win the gold class in race number 2. P4 overall ahead of Nathan Scott, and then Chris Eddersford in the end losing it all just before the line, P6. And what a difficult day of racing there for Chris Eddersford in race number 2. But indeed, now it is the case that we do cut to the warm-up race for the purposes of the build-up to race number 3 to give our drivers a break. But let's just take you through those results from what was race number 2 very quickly. And as we look to bring those up on screen, if we can bring them up, yep, here we go. It is the case to confirm from race number 2, or the Bean Main race, it was the case that Lee Aberdeen taking that win ahead of Daniel Nags and Harry Fox. Duncan Watts P4, Nathan Scott P5, completing the overall top 5. Chris Eddersford P6, Paul Bouchard P7, Kevin Wisley-Burt P8, Sidney Millen P9, and Craig Tillotson P10. Keep in mind, of course, that Sidney Millen and Craig Tillotson are not able to take to the grid for the purposes of race number 2, and we hope they're able to return for the purposes of race number 3, which will be coming to you in approximately 4 minutes' time. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we will, for now, briefly cut away, and we will be back in approximately 5 minutes or so. Well, in fact, we'll be back in 3 minutes' time, so we will be back at 21:19 for the purposes of what is the build-up to race number 3. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss it. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back, and it is the case that our drivers have been given a 5-minute break, but now we will be very shortly setting the grid for race number 3, our feature race for tonight, and let's take you through that grid. It is the case, once again, we have a reverse grid, and I do believe it will be Craig Tillotson who lines up on pole with Sidney Millen alongside, followed by Kevin Wesley Burke and Paul Bouchard on row number 2. 4 silver drivers in the top 4. We then have our gold pole position of Chris Eddersford, P5 on row number 3, being joined by Nathan Scott, then Duncan Watts and Harry Fox on row number 4, and Daniel Naggs and Lee Aberdeen making up the final row. Lee Aberdeen, of course, our platinum winner last time out and our overall winner, and Daniel Naggs taking the silver win. He starts in P9, and what a rare place for Daniel Naggs to start alongside the fastest platinum driver here today. And Harry Fox in P8 will be looking to try and make it a win come the end of this race. There's no doubt about that. Given the challenges he faces over the first 2 races tonight in round number 4 of the Formula 4 Championship, hosted by UK Sim Racing here at Snetterton 300, is the case we go racing one more time. And who will be the winners come the end of it? Let's find out. As the gridding process is complete, we get the lights. And it's lights out, away we go for race number 3 here. 20 minutes of racing, and our drivers get underway as they charge down towards turn number 1. And we see Paul Bouchard starting on pole with Burke, Millen and Tillotson not taking to the grid, and as they all head on through. Chris Eddersford then looking for the move up the inside of Paul Bouchard already, but he can't find it as they make their way down towards the Wilson hairpin. As they do, Eddersford up the inside here. Further back, we've got Harry Fox coming on through, making it a 2-for-1 dive special into the hairpin and gets it done. Past Nathan Scott and also Duncan Watts. They head up towards turn number 3. And as they do, they now all settle back into line astern formation as they roll their way through the left-hander of 3 and down towards turn number 4 they go. Paul Bouchard now having to look at his rearview mirrors here as Harry Fox tries to make more ground, and we see a lock up there for Paul. What was Chris Eddersford? He locks up into Agostini. Paul Bouchard meanwhile battling side by side here with Harry Fox on the exit, but it is the case that Harry Fox backs out as our 6 drivers carry on. Eddersford rejoins about 4 seconds back from this pack as they make their way on down around into Oggies, and we ride on board the gearbox here of the silver leader of Paul Bouchard, our overall leader, as he makes his way into Williams Bend. And now this will be where his exit is so critical. Can he get a good enough exit here to keep Harry Fox at bay? Will he weave briefly to cut the toe as they make their way down the back straight? But now he has to hold his line. Of course, he's allowed one change of direction on the straight. Harry Fox takes a peek here. Does he go for the move at last minute? No, he backs out here. 9, it's a 20-minute race, not a 15-minute race, and therefore he's got more time to play with it. But Paul Bouchard goes wide, and that will release Harry Fox here to lead this race. As we are behind, you see Lee Aberdeen there making ground as well as he moves up to P3. He's putting pressure on Nathan Scott here, and it is the case that Lee Aberdeen not pulling any punches and trying to get these moves done as soon as possible as they make their way through Coram Corner. As they roll their way through the corner for the first time of asking, and now down towards the start finish line to complete lap number 1. It is the case that we have Harry Fox who leads after 1 lap of racing ahead of Nathan J. Scott, your gold leader in P2, following the platinum driver. P3 is the platinum driver Lee Aberdeen, then Duncan Watts P4, followed by Paul Bouchard at P5, Daniel Naggs P6, and then Chris Eddersford last but not least at the moment in P7 of our runners. But meanwhile we must look from them to Nathan Scott here, who's under pressure from Lee Aberdeen as they head into Wilson hairpin. Once again you can see Lee Aberdeen get very close to the back of Nathan Scott's car as they make their way under braking and then out of the hairpin and down into Palmer Corner. A bit of dust being kicked up there. Lee Aberdeen using the full width of the circuit and then a little bit extra as well. He's got to be careful of that. He won't want to put too much of a tyre onto the dirt, otherwise it could go for a spin. But right now he's going up the inside of the braking into Agostini. And he gets the move there on the inside. Will we see a comeback from Scott? I don't think so. I think Nathan Scott's been trapped in behind. And Lee Aberdeen in the end getting the move done as they make their way into Hamilton Bend. Lee Aberdeen now will go hunting after Harry Fox. And to be fair, Harry Fox has got a lot to prove. He will not want to get it wrong here in race number 3. But Lee Aberdeen being this close already will only add pressure. Indeed, Harry Fox now will have to deal with that pressure for the remainder of the race. But Nathan's got P3 here. And as we look to Duncan Watts, here's the case that Duncan Watts right now going hunting after the gold leader. And behind him at Paul Bouchard here, our silver leader right now, trying to break away from Daniel Naggs and Chris Eddersford behind as they make their way in towards the boys, the Brundle, into Nelson Complex. But as they do, everybody settles down. It is the case. All the drivers will now need to find their feet and settle into the rhythm here for the 20 minutes of racing. It is the case we've got the shorter length, and I think that may be due to the low numbers tonight rather than the 30-minute race that was on the cards, and we do apologise for that. But as we see here, Paul Bouchard making his way through Coram. It is the case. The 5th place driver right now just focusing on keeping it straight and narrow. He doesn't need to do anything spectacular here. It has been the case that Daniel Nags finished P2 in race number 2 by keeping it smart and simple, and Paul Bouchat will do well to follow suit. But meanwhile, we look to our leaders here, and Harry Fox right now as he emerges from Richard's corner has got Lee Aberdeen inching ever closer, and Aberdeen is absolutely flying corner to corner here as we ride on board with the second place chaser as he heads up towards turn number 3. And as he does, it is the case you could see as they roll their way through Palmer corner, Lee Aberdeen just able to take a slightly earlier apex there, and that just gives him the ability to carry about a mile an hour speed more through the corner. It doesn't sound like much, but in the overall proceedings it helps every corner as we see Harry Fox going a little bit deep there. That's going to cost him even more time as they make their way out towards Hamilton. But do keep in mind, of course, that it's all about getting the exit out of Williams as Fox really testing the width of the circuit, pushing it to the limit. And as they roll their way through Oggies there, Harry Fox taking plenty of apex curve. Lee Aberdeen steering clear of it. I think Harry Fox is right on the edge right now as they head through the right-hander of Williams, and Fox is going to go a little bit wide. He takes to the runoff curve in there, which he is allowed to do. That's within track limits. And as they make their way down the back straight, down the Bentley straight, Lee Aberdeen in the tow, but by no means he makes his way into the top gear, close enough to look for the move. They trail break their way under the bridge, through Rundle into Nelson, and as they do, you can see Lee Aberdeen having to siphon the steering wheel there to keep the car pointed the way he wants it to go. Formula 4 battling with him as he rolls his way through bump hole. Harry Fox there almost losing the rear as he came out of the depression, and as they make their way through Coram, it is the case going through the penultimate corner into the final corner. Harry Fox really having to battle with the car to get it to point, and in fact he loses the rear end there, and Harry Fox goes around, and that will see him drop down the order there. A mistake from Harry Fox, just run a little bit too wide, and it's all gone wrong. And now he's got it all to do from what will be P6 here behind Daniel Nags, who will be the first target he goes after. Chris Edison is not too far behind, and let's take a look back at exactly what happened to Harry Fox. Well, this was only moments ago, and you'll see here how as he makes his way through the corner, just takes a bit too much apex curve. That sends the car out wide after clipping the apex curve with the front left tyre. He gets a bit of understeer as he tries to bring the car around on that exit curving. Keeping in mind, of course, that exit curving doesn't offer as much grip as the tarmac itself. He's trying to get the power down, and the car has just said no and gone around. The beat out of Harry Fox, he's been pushed to the limit tonight by Lee Aberdeen, and therefore plenty for him to take away. It is the case as we return to the live pictures now. Harry Fox definitely feeling that pressure of Lee Aberdeen, and now he's got to go hunting after trying to get back into P2. And if anything, this does feel a bit similar, a bit of a deja vu from races 1 and 2. Indeed, that's what's happened to Harry Fox over the course of tonight. That has been his story, to lose out and then have to recover to second place come the finish. But there's a long way to go in this race. We are only 6.5 minutes in. We've still got 13.5 minutes to go, and you can imagine that Harry Fox will be back with a vengeance. But as he heads down the back straight here, chasing after Daniel Nags now just needs to keep his head down and think about the target in front of him, and that is Paul Bouchat. And indeed, 306 Rally, I'd have to agree with you, Lee Aberdeen, or Mr. Aberdeen, is quite quick. He is absolutely charging, and well, whatever he's had for breakfast, I think everybody would love to have that for breakfast as well. But meanwhile, speaking of having drivers for breakfast, Harry Fox here would love to make a quick snack out of Daniel Nags in terms of making this pass, but we have seen Daniel Nags is a good defensive driver. He showed that in race number 2, and as he makes his way through Coram, in fact, making a bit of a mistake there, Daniel Nags taking a bit too much apex curving. Well, there's not really a curve there for the apex of Coram, particularly the latter half, but putting that front right tyre onto the grass and actually almost losing the rear of the car slightly, and that had meant that Harry Fox had to back out as he was trying to build that momentum up, and Harry Fox will capitalise on that. He'll see that Nags is a little bit nervous at the moment and seems to be a little bit out of rhythm, and therefore if you can keep that pressure up as a driver, you can really upset the driver in front of you if they can't refine their rhythm quickly. And right now Harry Fox looking for the move. He's too far back to go for it here, coming out of Wilson Bend, but heading up towards Palmer. If he can get a good run through Palmer, he'll be able to set it up into Agostini as they head through the left-hander here and now make their way down to the left-hand hairpin. Will he be able to go for the move? Harry Fox, he's got the exit, but is he close enough? I don't think so. I think he's too far back. He's about a tenth too far back to go for the move. He has to settle and wait. As they head their way through the left-hander, just up the road, of course, Paul Bouchat, who is only 2.5 seconds up, and then Duncan Watts a further 2 seconds beyond them. It is the case. The rest of the field are not too far away as they make their way under braking, but meanwhile, we have got, I believe, oh, goodness me, Duncan Watts into the wall there, coming out of Oggies. What on earth has happened to Duncan Watts? Well, this was only moments ago. In fact, we ride on board here with Duncan Watts as he made his way through the corner. He just missed the apex go and tried to carry the car around too aggressively, and in the end the car just simply snapped on him and said no. Missing the wall there, he didn't hit the wall, that just was the camera making us think he'd hit the wall, but in the end getting back up to speed, and Duncan Watts having a difficult moment as we return to live pictures. And in fact we look here to Daniel Nags, who's gone deep as we come back to live pictures out of that Nelson bend, and that is going to release Harry Fox into P4. So in the end he's put Daniel Nags in a bit of a pressure cooker, and it is the case that pressure cooker has overheated, and in the form of Daniel Nags running wide, and now it is the case the number 42 driver here's got to recompose himself because he'll want to go hunting after Paul Bouchard, who's in P3 currently, but he'll be thinking about the fact that Paul Bouchard will eventually be passed by Harry Fox. That'll be his prediction, and when he is, he can then go hunting after the silver class leader. As they make the way on through here, and on to what for them now is lap number 6. It is the case that from Daniel Nags to Paul Bouchard here, the P3 driver, the Briton, making his way out of turn number 2, out of Wilson Bend and up towards Palmer. At this point, he's just got to focus on delivering. He hasn't got the pace to be matching the likes of Nathan Scott or Lee Aberdeen in front, but he has got the pace to be outpacing the likes of Daniel Nags behind him potentially, although Harry Fox is coming up fast. And in fact, on that last lap, it was the case that Harry Fox took a couple attempts out. You can imagine on the next lap, it may be a bit more. And now that Harry Fox doesn't have to worry about battling with Daniel Nags, he's got clear track in front of him. And we'll have to see how rapidly that gap descends as Bouchard makes his way through Hamilton and up towards Oggie's Bend. But as he heads through the right-hander here, we look to our leader, Lee Aberdeen, as the camera turns around towards him. And it is the case that Lee Aberdeen right now heading off into the distance. I think this camera angle is a brilliant summation of what he's been able to achieve so far in races number 1 and 2, and what he's trying to achieve here in race number 3. It is the case just leave the rest of the field behind. But speaking of leaving behind, it is the case we look to Duncan Watts, and he will not want to be left behind here in chasing after Daniel Nags as they make the way through Brundle into Nelson. And as they do, the We Went Car Racing driver, after that major error earlier on, is now hunting down our P5 driver. And indeed, Daniel Nags, the silver driver, definitely getting a lot of batting with the gold and also the platinum class drivers here today. And I think he's learning and building from it, it has to be said, as they make the way through Coriam and down into the last corner of what is Murray's, of course. Now as they roll the way on through, 9 minutes still on the clock, it is the case that Duncan Watts here has the better run as they head out the corner down the start finish straight here, of our drivers heading up to in excess of what will be 130 miles an hour if not more. And as they head into the braking zone here for turn number 1, it's up the inside there for Duncan Watts. He gets it done, but will it be the case that Daniel Nags comes on through, and Nags comes back in here into Wilson Bend? It's brilliant cutback racing from Daniel Nags, but in the end he's just not got enough time of day to force the door open fully into Wilson Bend. But Daniel Nags there, to be fair, went for it, and that's what you love to see. And Nags, I think if he was just a little bit bolder on the brakes there, he could have potentially made that happen, but it wasn't to be as they make the way down towards Agostini. But he's had the better run out of Palmer corner, but he's not able to get alongside. But Nags definitely showing his fangs here, and this is a sign of a driver who's improving. And whilst there's not many drivers in the field today, Nags isn't letting that stop him from take the fight to the gold and the platinum drivers, and definitely one to watch out for later in the season here. He's definitely building on this as he makes his way for Oggie's, and in fact Watts then making a small mistake into Oggie's, taking a bit of dust with him, and that's cost him a bit of momentum as they head into Williams Bend. And as they coming out now down the back straight, can Nags find a way to go on attack? But as they make the way on down, it is the case. No potential move here from Nags, or is there, as we wait for them to pass underneath the bridge. Nags takes the peak, but it's not to happen. And in the end, that is how it remains for the time being. As we say hello to UKSR's Chris Edison in the chat there, who we see has retired from this race, and saying they're horrible, great car. It sounds as though it's been a difficult day for you, Chris, and well, our feelings do go out for you in the fact that there were a couple of great moments for yourself in races 1 and 2, but it just hasn't been today your day, as we see Duncan Watts there locking up into the final corner, and Daniel Nags in fact getting very close. And as we look to the stationary camera here, they'll head across the line with 7 minutes left on the clock before they get to Riches. And as they head on down here, we wait for the camera to pan round, and it is the case that Nags is going to try and go around the outside, but Duncan Watts goes very late on the brakes and almost goes off the circuit there, and Nags getting Duncan Watts to make an error. And now as they make the way down to the braking zone for Wilson Bend, Nags up the inside, and this is brilliant return racing aggressive for Daniel Nags. He's got on the counter-attack, and he's got P5 back. Will I be absolutely amazed? I'll tell you that is the case, that Daniel Nags definitely showing he's got those fangs, and right now I think Duncan Watts has been caught by surprise. Brilliant move there to get back into P5, but as they head down into turn number 4, it is the case. They head on through the left-hander of Agostini, and right now Duncan Watts trying to come on back again in one of the closest battles out on circuit. But let's not forget as well, we do have Paul Bouchard, who's been closed up to by Harry Fox in the battle for P3 overall, and we will cut to that here now as they make the way out of Williams Bend. But as they do, they come charging on out and down towards what is the Brundle Nelson complex. Up ahead of them, that is, I do believe that's Nathan Scott, who in fact has lost a bit of time compared to the two drivers behind him. So it's the case, Nathan Scott not pulling away, but Paul Bouchard here holding on to that P3 for the time being. And as they roll the way out to Nelson, it is the case, the time continues to tick down, but with it, Harry Fox not able to find a way on through at the moment, although we are hearing that Daniel Nags has just had an off track at Nelson. He's given back the place to Duncan Watts. He's just lost out on P5 for the time being, but we're focusing on the battle for P3, and again another silver driver showing that they're not just part of the furniture here. It is the case, they're here to race just as hard as the platinum and the gold drivers, and as they make the way to the start finish straight, Bouchard goes defensive here in the long run up towards Riches down the centre straight, but Harry Fox has got the momentum on his side, he's got the speed, and in the end it is the case that Paul Bouchard tucks in behind, the door shuts, and Harry Fox is up to P3. And his next job, take on Nathan Scott, who's in P2, as they head on down, as they break their way into the Wilson hairpin here. It is the case, given the shortening of the race time to 20 minutes from 30 minutes, we may not actually see a pit stop in this one. It may be the case it's a sprint all the way through, which if so, that's absolutely fine. In fact, we haven't seen any pit stops so far, so as they make the way out of Palmer and down towards Agostini, this may be a third sprint of the day, albeit 5 minutes longer, but indeed our drivers seem to be enjoying it out there. But we do look to Lee Aberdeen. It is the case that Aberdeen just right now flying off into the distance. Still his lead, 9.2 seconds almost, 5 minutes left on the clock, and at this point I think he can keep his cool and not have to push more than about 80% in order to bring it home. He can really back it off if he wants to protect the car, but Nathan Scott meanwhile would keep pressing on, because the thing for Nathan Scott, he would love to pick up a P2 overall here, particularly with the fast charger of Harry Fox behind, and of course if Lee Aberdeen even makes one mistake, Nathan Scott could be there to capitalise on it as our drivers make the way down towards Nelson into Brundle. But as they come down here this time, in fact, Brundle into Nelson, I should say, it's the other way around. It is the case that Nathan Scott there, as I get all my names mixed up and whatnot. Scott moving on, and Harry Fox, well, through that sector, it is the case that Harry Fox a little bit faster through sector 2 by comparison, and is starting to put that pressure onto the gold driver in front. But as they roll the way on down at this point, and that gap stands at what is a second, and now as they make the way into the start finish straight onto the centre straight, he will start to feel a very distant tow, will Harry Fox, off of the back of Scott, and he will build up that momentum in the slipstream, more so when he's about 7/10 behind and closing, but he will get a very distant tow here, which will give him a small boost. But as they roll the way into Rich's corner, this is where Fox gains. He gains through the corners by comparison, particularly those medium speed apexes such as Rich's, such as Williams, and as he heads into Wilson hairpin this time around, it is the case the gap now stands at 8.5 tenths rather than a whole second when they went onto this lap, and Fox is continuing to try and breathe down the neck of his rival as they charge on through what is Palmer corner and heading up towards Agostini. But as they charge on down at this point, we ride on board here with Harry Fox as he rolls his way into Agostini Bend, and as he does on board in the cockpit and having to slide his way out the corner, that shows you how much he's pushed from the fact that he's not letting the car settle, instead drifting it through apex. He takes a bit too much apex curve there of what was Hamilton Bend, and in fact taking so much grass that the front left tyre just had no grip by comparison with the other tyres. And as he made his way out, they caught the car very nicely. If he hasn't considered a career in fielding in cricket where he can catch the ball, it's because he's catching these cars very well. He may want to consider one. Whereas he makes his way down the back straight right now, it is the case charging after Scott. Now 6.5 tenths of closing, and in that draft, we can see that gap is now coming down a bit more. You can see in the battle box at the bottom right corner of your screen, and when he's in that more direct tow, he's able to bring that gap down by a tenth on the straights by the slipstream. And as he rolls his way out to Nelson, gaining a bit more there, as Nathan's got a bit out of sorts. Through bomb hole they go in towards Coram, and this will be the corner that makes or breaks the potential for a move into turn 1 the next lap. With 2 minutes to go, the race leader coming to the timing line. We may be onto the penultimate lap, we may be onto the final lap. What's it going to be? We're going to have 2 more laps of race, and I can confirm the Aberdeen has crossed the line with enough time to go on to 2 more laps. And Harry Fox there, in fact, making an error coming out to the final corner, and Nathan Scott being given a lifeline as they make the way into turn number 1 for the penultimate time of asking. As they roll their way down through turn number 1 and into the braking zone here. Well, Harry Fox trying to inch ever closer into that braking zone. The thing for him is he's pushing so hard at this point to close that gap. I think he's really run the limit. And what about Nathan Scott? Well, you'd have to imagine that Nathan Scott at this point is definitely trying to drive it 100%, if not more. But if Nathan Scott's got anything reserved, that could help him later on into this battle in terms of the fact he might be extracted just a little bit more out of the car. But as they make the way out of Agostini this time, you can see the gap is now half a second here, and Fox really close and aggressively will stay with this battle to the end now, as it is the case, closest battle on circuit, and we've only got this lap plus the final lap to go. And as we run on board the gearbox here, Nathan Scott emerging from Oggie's corner, you can see the differences in lines there as well. It's the case Nathan Scott understeers a little bit further beyond the apex of Oggie's as he tries to exit, and that cost him the speed in the run to Williams, whereas it's the case that Harry Fox takes a much tighter exit line initially as he's able to hug the apex and then get the power down through turn 7 up towards Williams. And as they make the way down the Bentley straight here, Fox takes a little bit of a peek to the inside, just trying to get into the head of Nathan Scott. Is it successful? Nathan Scott takes a huge amount of apex curve. It is successful, and Harry Fox in the end forces Nathan Scott into an error, a psychological error, and Nathan Scott off circuit, and well, my goodness, he brings it back together, and as he heads on down through bomb hole, it is the case with one more lap to go. Now he's got Duncan Watts after him for the win in the gold class, but as he rolls his way on through, it is the case. We look to Lee Aberdeen here, and as he heads through turn number 1, well, we have 20 minutes complete. The checker flag will be out the next time around, and Lee Aberdeen doing everything he needs to win this one, but Harry Fox has just set the fastest lap of the race. He's picked Lee Aberdeen's fastest lap of 47.1. Harry Fox sets a 46.87, and Fox, whilst he's not going to be able to beat Lee Aberdeen in terms of position, I think he'll have a little bit of pride in terms of being able to say I was faster than you in terms of one lap in race number 3. But meanwhile, we do look to Paul Bouchard here, your leader in the silver class, and all he's got to do is bring it home now as the time has ticked down and he's got one lap to go. But as he makes his way through turn number 3 and down towards Agostini at this point, Nathan Scott bringing himself back up to speed. He's broken back away from what's at the time being the gap back up to almost 8 tenths here. I think if he keeps it together and doesn't make any more errors, he will be coming home with a gold lead. It's not far to go, and in fact, just a little bit of a lock up there on the front end of the car coming into the braking zone for Agostini. You could just see how the car wouldn't turn in initially. He had to really force the car into apex, and that's not what you want as a driver when you're on that final lap and you've got someone bearing down your neck. My goodness, Duncan Watts there going very late on the brakes into Oggie's. It's cost him on quarter exit, but they're really trying to muscle his way close to the back of Nathan Scott, I think, to try and get into his head. But it is the case, as we're hearing that Daniel Nags has had an off track and has dropped down to P6. It is the case, it's got a bit wrong for Daniel Nags. We do look from them to your race leader, and here he is, Lee Aberdeen. And well, what could be said today after not setting a lap in qualifying? He came from the back of the field in race number 1 to win. He came from the back of the field in race number 2 to win, and he's going to do it a third time as he comes from the back of the field. Lee Aberdeen takes the win here at Snetterton 300 in race number 3, taking the win overall and in the platinum class. Harry Fox and him will come on home to take P2 overall and in the platinum class as well. A difficult day for Harry Fox, with one full of battles and excitement. But meanwhile, Nathan Scott, I think, has had a bit of an incident on the final lap alongside Duncan Watts, but they will not take away from Paul Bouchard coming home in P3, taking the silver win, and then Duncan Watts crosses the line, P4, taking the gold win. But was there drama between him and Nathan J. Scott at the very end? We're not sure. Nathan J. Scott comes home in P5, and then it will be Daniel Nags who completes the field, coming on through the final corners here. A difficult final race for Daniel Nags as he rolls his way through that final corner and to the finish line. And as he heads on down here, it is the case that Daniel Nags definitely having a very exciting night tonight. But P6 overall, P2 in the silver class is where he'll finish in this race. And as he crosses the line, let's take a look at exactly what happened to Nathan Scott right at the end there. Whereas he was making his way through what was Coram Bend here. It was down into Morris Murray's corner where it all went wrong. Now we'll see, breaks his way in, and it's an error of his own doing. He takes a spin, and good to be Duncan Watts. Had to be very savvy to dodge Nathan Scott losing it, and in the end getting it done. And well, here's the case that Duncan Watts, there was some evasive action right at the end, making sure to bring home that win. That could have been a calamity for the pair of them, but it wasn't to be. But what is to be is these race results. Let's take a look at them for race race number 3, as in fact they do come on in, and apologies, those aren't the right results. Let's bring them on to you, and here they are, ladies and gentlemen. In the end, in race number 3 of round 4 of the UK Sim Racing Formula 4 Championship, as brought to you on iRacing here at Snetterton 300 today, it was Lee Aberdeen taking the win in the end by 9.4 seconds ahead of Harry Fox, and then Paul Bouchard, the silver driver, taking the silver class win and also rounding off the overall podium. Duncan Watts taking the gold class win ahead of Nathan Scott, and then Daniel Naggs P6 with the mid-race retirement of Chris Eddersford, and then Craig Tiddleston, Sidney Millen and Kevin Wesley Burton not taking to the grid, finishing P8 through to P10. Well, that is all the racing here today at the Snetterton 300 circuit, and indeed, as Duncan Saw W says there in the Twitch chat, if you could dodge a Nathan, indeed a Nathan Scott, you could dodge a ball, quoting the infamous line from what is Dodgeball in the movie, a movie we strongly recommend. There was a lot of dodging done today by drivers in terms of watching out for wayward cars, but Snetterton has generated some fantastic racing, and now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for us to wrap up. So with that, thank you very much for watching. And if you have enjoyed today's broadcast, do let us know. And if you want to know more about the UK sim racing community in terms of the series we run, what we represent, and what we do on iRacing, it is the case you can check us out at our official website. That is uksimracing.co.uk. And remember, on our website, we do have links to our affiliates. And our affiliates, as you can see there, Swilly Omeda Sim Racing Coaching, and also Race Anywhere. Their links and details available on screen. And it is the case that if you do use the links on our website to go make a purchase for our affiliates, you will get a discount, and in return we at UK Sim Racing will get a kickback from your purchase, which as a non-profit organisation we will invest into a future series and whatnot, and keep the UK Sim Racing community alive with plenty of racing action, not just for 2022 but for the years to come. It is the case upwards and onwards here at UK Sim Racing. And if you don't want to take a look at our website but you're more of a Twitter person, then you can always go to twitter.com/UK Sim Racing _ for all the latest news. And if you don't want to go to Twitter, then why not just simply subscribe to the twitch.tv channel if you're not subscribed already. That is twitch.tv/UK Sim Racing, where you can keep up to date with all of our latest racing broadcasts, whether it be in the GT3s, the Formula 4s, or anything in between. But now, ladies and gentlemen, it is the case that our drivers will be packing up their bags from the Snetterton 300 circuit and making their way from what is a very tricky infield and outfield circuit to the Silverstone circuit. Round number 5, it takes place on Wednesday, the 10th of August 2022 at the high-speed, high-downforce circuit. Who will come out on top come the finish? We will have to find out in 2 weeks. But until then, thank you very much for tuning in. We have been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host, Paul TX141 Walsh. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, stay smiling. But most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.